Students, friends, and countrymen, welcome to the Bold Lessons by Overseas Prep Lab. Today, I am not alone. With me, I have a very special guest. Now, before I introduce her to all of you, it's important that you know why she has taken out her precious time to be with us today. Over the past few months, since the introduction of the GMAT Focus Edition, there has been a lot of apprehensions among GMAT test takers and aspiring B school applicants. They want to understand how does the new scoring pattern work? Is the GMAT Focus Edition harder than the legacy GMAT edition? How would universities perceive their scores and so on and so forth? Now, while we understand all of this, I thought it's best to hear it from the horse's mouth. So let's put our hands together to welcome today's guest, Ms. Seema Parakkat from GMAC, the Graduate Management Admission Council. Yes, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Seema is a seasoned professional with over 12 years of work experience in product management, product marketing and communications, business development, stakeholder management, event planning, entrepreneurship, international exam preparation, as well as content management. Now, she has worked in a variety of industries ranging from entertainment to education. Not only does she have a master's in computer applications, she has also a degree in a master's in English. At GMAC, Seema manages all the candidate outreach and stakeholder management. So, Seema, welcome to the Bold Lessons, and it's such a pleasure to have you here.
You're most welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, great. So, without further ado, let me dive into the questions, Seema, that we have for you today. The very first question that I would like to ask you is, some GMAT aspirants feel that the GMAT Focus Edition is harder than the legacy GMAT. How true is that?
Quite funny. I mean, that's something that I get asked a lot as well. Well, for starters, of course, we've renamed both of them. Now it's 10th edition for the earlier version, and this is GMAT exam. There's no Focus Edition anymore, which brings me to the question like, is the GMAT newer version difficult or not? Absolutely not. I mean, it's still, and in fact, I always say that it has become less stressful in comparison to what existed earlier, that in comparison to the 10th edition. A lot of pain points, a lot of stress points are actually taken off in the newer version of the exam. In fact, people can even go back and actually edit responses, which gives them a little bit of comfort in knowing that they can manage the time better. But apart from that, the question adaptiveness has always made sure that the exam adapts to somebody's, exam taking behavior or their capability and, skill set, right? And that it continues to do that. So I think that that's a bit of a myth, I am sure.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point you make when you speak about the flexibility of the exam. Of course, it's a much shorter exam now, and some of the things have been removed from the legacy GMAT, which means you're making it very clear where students need to focus. I do have a follow-up question to that, though. Is the adaptive algorithm of the new version of the GMAT different from the old GMAT? I do have, if you could just throw some light on that.
It has been enhanced for sure. Obviously, when when the newer version came into the picture, was also an opportunity to make sure the test is even more fair and unbiased. And along with the difficulty matching, more context also is taken into consideration. Of course, I can't deep dive into it because it's a proprietary algorithm, but the primary aspect of difficulty matching or the question adaptiveness, that still stands. But at the same time, there's few more things that are considered. But then again, I always say that one of the things that I tell the candidates is also to not think too much about the algorithm, because at the end of the day their focus should be the format of the exam and understanding the question types and getting the questions right, because they can't fully understand the algorithm because we've not shared that. And the other aspect is that's an aspect they cannot control.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point you make, Seema, because I keep telling my students that you cannot really control something over which you have absolutely no influence. And in an exam scenario, if you think too much about the adaptive algorithm, your focus will go away from how you answer the questions, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, you've nailed it when you say that, because that's literally what I say.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there's just so many nuances to the entire experience. For instance, if somebody gets a easy question, it could be an experimental question. It could be just because, if I'm a test taker, that I find that topic really easy. So there's too many subjective aspects there to be really sure about whether I'm actually doing well or not so well basis one easy question.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that brings me to my next and a very, very important question, which I think all GMAT aspirants would love to understand. What is a good score on this new version? Of course, we know that B schools don't really define a score cutoff, but then students are finding it difficult to understand how a 665 on this new scale is equivalent to a 720 on the legacy GMAT. How would you address this if you can just help people understand?
One of the things I always tell everybody is GMAT is not an elimination exam. It is an exam that enhances opportunities. We generally tend to, as a general population, we generally tend to think that, oh, there's a cutoff, and then, if I don't get beyond the score, my opportunities are over. But the fact is, that's what we boast about, right? GMAT brings you opportunities. It doesn't take away opportunities from you. And it really depends upon the schools. I mean, if I, as a candidate, wanted to know what kind of scores I should be targeting, my aim would be on two aspects. One is a scholarship, and the other one is to improve my chances of an admit. Um, Keeping in consideration all of my remaining profile, my essays, my endeavors in let's say leadership, my motivation to do, let's say, a business or a business masters or an MBA program, all of it, and of course the work experience aspect, all of it in consideration along with the score is what is going to contribute to the admit or to me getting a really good scholarship, right? And for that, for somebody to actually decide exactly where should I fall to make sure that
Mhm.
I'm competitive, is to actually go look at the past data from the schools. And that is
Yeah.
why people do have to make sure that they do sufficient research. There's never sufficient research, actually. I mean, just keep doing a lot of research and do
Yeah.
it early to understand what kind of schools that they would actually like to get into. The moment they do that, I always say that, put it on an Excel sheet, or, take your notes down, talk to the admission committee. But from the past data and the class profile that's published by the business schools, they can actually see the score range, the median scores that are now moving forward,
Mhm.
percentiles that the candidates who got an admit have gotten, right? Or by
Right.
the direct interaction with the school professionals, they'll be able to see what's a competitive score, the percentile look for scholarships. So there's no easy way around it. We always want shortcuts, and we will always want one fix for all. But this
Mhm.
is literally, it's a competitive thing. I mean, especially when you look at a scholarship. So this is
Mhm.
the best advice I can actually give everybody who's looking at it from, a score perspective.
So that's a very important point, Seema. What you're saying is that your B school research is a must. Students must know what historically have got other students in, and therefore they need to be well aware of not just the scores, but also of all the other components that are required for them to get into the B schools. That's a fantastic point, and I think that's something all aspirants should remember.
Know
There's a
what
lot
to
of
fall in
flexibility.
between
Yeah.
with, right? Like approximately where should you fall to make sure you're competitive?
So, a little while earlier, we did speak about the flexibility that has been introduced. For example, students can now go back and change some of the responses to their questions. Also, another big change that has happened, which I don't think many people are aware of yet, uh, the significance of that is immense, is that students can now select the B schools where they want to send their score reports for free after they have taken the test. I think that gives them a lot more control over how they want to use their score and where they want to send their scores. Would you like to elaborate on that point and how advantageous it
Absolutely,
can be?
absolutely. I feel there are some things that we take a bit for granted, or we just caught up in a lot of other things that we don't realize that these things are really important. Because obviously, with the GMAT registration, everybody gets 5 free score reports.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in the past, when I was not a part of GMAC as well, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing that right now. Not right now. I mean, with the previous, the 10th edition, after they've taken the exam, or right before they take the exam, they had to select the business schools that they wanted to send the
Yes.
5 pre-score reports to. And most often, after they receive the actual score, they realize that, oh, maybe they, I would like to change the schools and I would like to apply to a couple of other schools. And
Hmm.
it so happened that they were not able to make a well-informed choice with respect to those 5 free score reports.
Yeah.
But we are literally making sure that that advantage is something that they can use very wisely and use it to their advantage. Something
Yeah.
that's free and that will benefit them is now actually going to benefit them. So once they complete the exam, get within 3 to 5 days, it's pretty fast now. They'll get their official score report on the MBA.com, and
Yes.
once they get that official score report, though, they have 48 hours to make that decision as to which business schools that they want to send their scores to. By now, they already know their
Amazing.
scores. So
Yeah.
they would have done their research. They should do their research.
Absolutely.
Um, and they have like 48 hours to make that choice and decide. Now, if they don't do anything in that period,
Hmm.
they would not, it'll just remain as it is. And any additional score reports, they have to pay an additional fee. So I
Yeah.
strongly
Yeah.
recommend everybody to make use of that benefit and make sure that they actually send their score reports.
So, in other words, your B school research shouldn't just end after you take the exam or up until your exam. It has to continue even beyond your exam, isn't it? Another very exciting feature I saw is that in the enhanced score report, you have this section, isn't it, Seema, where you can see how your score is performing in terms of the percentile for the particular universities where you have sent your score, isn't it? What a cool feature that is. I mean, it's super exciting.
Yeah. I see why you're excited because I think as an academician, that's one of the features I was excited about. I think
Yeah.
that stems from a fact that, and I think academicians are the ones who would appreciate it the most.
Yeah.
Because as somebody who might teach GMAT, you know that if somebody, let's say, tries to retake the exam again, you just have so much of information, such wealth of information that helps you understand. One, like with respect to the schools, where do you stand with respect to other people who have sent the scores to the same school? It gives you a competitive insight into how things look like, at least from a score perspective. Second thing
Yes.
is,
Yes.
of course, with all of the information about how you performed in a content domain, the questions,
Yes. Very, very important that. Yeah.
the topic, the timeline, the time taken to actually answer a question. This helps. This is bound to help anybody retaking the exam immensely, because earlier
Yeah.
this enhanced score report was came at an additional cost, but you have it all for free in the additional the score report, official score report now, right?
Yes.
And that
Yes.
is so useful for candidates. So from both perspectives, one, knowing where you stand with respect to the schools and the competitiveness. Second, knowing what you need to fix when you go ahead and retake the exam. I think the insights that's provided into the or built into the official score report is like phenomenal.
Absolutely, Siva. Now, another question which kind of uh, our students keep asking, and something that's I think very important that we clear out. I'm sure universities too understand the new scoring pattern, and they too would have kind of lowered their scoring threshold, isn't it? Because they also need to realign how they are looking at the scores now. Would you like to speak a little bit about that, Seema?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, this is another question that's on everybody's mind since the beginning,
Mhm.
and it continues to pop up now and then. So it's important to note that the schools have been a part of the process, including the scores. So it's not like it's new for them and they don't know how to look at it. In fact, looking at, let's say, a CGPA or a grade is even more complex than how
Mm,
they would
mm.
actually look at a GMAT score. And of course, the 10th edition scores will continue to get sent basis the 5 years validity period that's there.
Of course, yeah.
In the next couple of years, the schools will continue to receive scores from both the 10th edition as well as the current GMAT exam. But the way they're going to look at it is not entirely from a scores perspective, because it's not an apple to apple comparison. There used to be two sections contributing to the total score earlier. Now there's three sections. The content mix has changed, and of
Yeah.
course, the scores have been recalibrated. So all of
Mm,
these things are taken into consideration, and the
yeah.
way we would look at it is actually pretty simple. That's a percentile ranking concordance table is there. It's available for the candidates to look at and review and see as well on the MBA.com. So that's
Yes.
pretty transparent. They know how the schools are going
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
look at it.
About the repositioning of the content in this new GMAT, I think with data sufficiency moving into the data insights section, and with data insights retaining most of integrated reasoning from earlier, it's a clear indication to B school aspirants, isn't it, that data analytics is a key skill that is being tested, isn't it? Because, of course, it's such an in demand skill here, isn't it? What do you think about that?
So if you look at the corporate recruiter survey in 2023 as well as
Mm,
2024, that remains a very important skill set, like your decision making skills, your problem solving skills, your data literacy skills.
yeah.
This year also we have more than 900 respondents for a survey, and the employers continue to emphasize on these skills being of the utmost importance, and they want candidates who demonstrate this and who are able to actually function in an environment that requires these skills. And that's the same with the business schools also, because they consider it really important for the future, now and for the
Absolutely.
future. Yeah.
So, one last question here for you, Seema. Last year, both GRE and GMAT exams underwent a change. While in GRE, there was no change in content, it was just shortened. But in GMAT, we just spoke a little about the repositioning of the content. Now, while both are equally well accepted for B school applications, would you still say that for B school applications, especially if a student hasn't started preparing anything yet, GMAT is the hands down winner, specifically because of the way it has been specifically designed for B school applications?
Hands down. Hands down, yes.
Yeah.
Couple of things here to note is I just the content, like just the thing that we spoke about a few seconds ago,
Mm.
about the kind of skills that are required to be demonstrated to be successful in a business education environment and in a career. I always say this. I mean, it's a very practical thing. I mean, if you've done critical reasoning, I think this is
Yes.
something you can put two and two together. It's not enough you get an admit, right? You need to be able to perform well in your business education, in order for
Absolutely.
you to get a job, and you need to perform well in your job in order to sustain that. Career
Absolutely.
growth and you let's say increased pay and everything does not come easily. I mean, the competition is like super high, so you do
Absolutely.
require all of these skills, and if you cannot deal with this, how are you really going to perform in a work environment? I mean, that's a big question, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
it doesn't even match up to the kind of rigor that they're going to experience in a business school, whether it be a business master's or an MBA. It is going to be rigorous. It is going to be very competitive. So that's one point to note. Second thing is, I mean, um, the content, like when you look at the GMAT exam overall, while considering the skills that are tested, I feel it's definitely become less stressful. I mean, there was a point of comparison earlier wherein, oh, the exam itself was really rigorous, because just because of its
Yeah.
sheer length, I think
Length. Yes.
it was quite intimidating for a lot of people. But as I said, a lot of those pressure points or pain points, they've been kind of taken off. You know, now the students don't even have to worry about all of the scores going to the business schools. Only they can select the scores which they want to send to the business school, right?
Precisely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And moreover, when you look at the topics that they have to learn, if you look at it, GMAT has got less content in terms of
Yes.
variety than
True.
GRE
True
does.
that.
So if
Yeah.
you look at it from that perspective, I think it's definitely not as stressful as it used to be for sure.
Absolutely understood. And as it is, I think over the years, time and time again, GMAC has made it very, very clear that your reading skills are very, very important. And that's why the focus has always been on reading comprehension with critical thinking ability, isn't it?
It's
The
about
focus
paying
is on.
attention. I
Yes,
feel like,
yes.
critical reasoning and reading is definitely quite related to each other, if you know what I mean. I
They
mean,
are,
it
they
is,
are
yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Agreed.
So I think being able to, whether it be long text or whether it be short text, I mean, being able to kind of find, logic and be able to, understand relationship between different parts of the text, and really pay attention and make logical decisions and conclusions basis that that's like literally evidence based,
Yes,
answering, right? I think that that's going to always be important. I mean, if you're in a business role, if you are going to be in a decision making position, you do not want to be somebody who just like jumps on a whim and makes assumptions and does
absolutely,
things randomly. You really have to be
absolutely.
kind of quick on your feet and be logical as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the entire structure of the GMAT, whether you're talking about critical reasoning in verbal or data sufficiency in data insight section now, data sufficiency, to be very honest, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is not really a test of math. It's a test of your critical thinking ability, isn't it? So again, the emphasis on how important critical thinking is.
One thing I would say is I know that it looks like there's other exams and other options for me to take up. It's worth looking at the class profiles and understand that about 60 to 70% of the class is made up of GMAT exam, people who come from the GMAT exam. And the second thing I've already talked about this is it's hyped up, but it's not. If you follow the right approach, if you go about it in the right manner, it's not really hard. It's just,
Absolutely.
I mean, I used to when I started off, I used to think that is quite challenging, and I've never been a straight A student or somebody who's like top of the class kind of student. But I feel like, every GMAT test taker that I've spoken to and who's gone through that journey, they've always said that it's been life changing for them because it's really changed the way they think and make decisions. So I feel there's
Absolutely.
just so much you get out of the exam. And my opinion is if you're going to spend time, effort, and money on something, you need to do it for something that's going to give you something back.
True.
So from that perspective, uh, just go into it and don't think twice. I'm sure that you'll realize that there's just like so many opportunities that you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, Seema. I think it's not a very difficult exam. And if you plan it well, I don't see a reason why we can't crack it in the very first attempt. So, thank you once again, Seema, for being on the show. And I hope we can send out this message to a lot of GMAT test takers and B school aspirants. Thank you once again.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me here today.